Oh hey, Bear Grylls here. Cycling Unboxed. And today I want to talk to you about TPU inner tubes. A lot of people think I sound like Bear Grylls, but one thing I haven't heard about is a competitor for the RideNow TPU inner tubes. Until now, these are the EXAR TPU inner tubes, EXAR. And I want to take a deeper dive to see if these are worth buying over the RideNow TPU inner tubes. Stick around, let's find out. With these aside for now, I first want to talk about the current state and situation we're in with TPU inner tubes. And first of all, let's talk about the good. The first thing that we know is the rolling resistance is really good on TPU inner tubes. They are almost competitive with a latex inner tube and far faster than a butyl inner tube. The next thing we can really tell about them that is good is the weight of them. We know they are much lighter than a normal butyl inner tube and even lighter than a latex inner tube. And I'm going to weigh these ones in a little bit later for you. And the weight is where it counts the most, right around the edge of the wheel, so that's where you're going to feel it. So whenever you accelerate hard, it's going to feel faster using a much lighter inner tube. A next great feature about TPU inner tubes is that they are very packable. So right here I have a normal butyl inner tube and this is a skinny one, it's like a 23mm tire. And here are the RideNows compared to it. Like you can fit like 4 or 5 of these RideNows compared to this one. And even these EXAR ones are just like literally a third of the diameter. So much more packable. The final thing that I really like about TPU inner tubes is actually they fit quite a lot of widths of tires. Like they usually go from like a 23mm, which you don't even see nowadays anymore, and they go all the way usually up to a 30 or a 32mm tire. You can just chuck the same inner tube in. You don't need to buy a specific width. And that brings us on to the bad things about TPU inner tubes. We know that most brands and companies that offer these, like Pirelli for example, they cost like £25–30 plus, which is just ridiculous for a single inner tube. And then we get to the RideNow inner tubes. So when they're working, they're great, but I've had a lot of people report in my previous video, which is here, a lot of reliability issues. Most people seem to get along fine with them and don't have any problems, but even I had a problem with the first inner tube that I put in. And they kind of make up for it in their price because you can buy loads of them for cheap. It doesn't really matter if you lose 1 or 2. But they're the only ones on the market, and I think that's a bad thing. If there's just one type of TPU tube on the market that's affordable, then there's no competitors. And because you're buying these from AliExpress, the truth is you don't really have the support. If a TPU inner tube goes wrong or it's just not manufactured properly, then there's no one to contact, there's no one to talk to, there's no one to get your money back from. So you kind of just have to sacrifice the cost of the tube. But it's still much better and much cheaper than buying the original tubes. But with the rise of Chinese companies, we're starting to see other competitors in the market. And the first being EXAR. And I want to know if these TPU inner tubes can now compete with the RideNows. For a quick full disclaimer, I was sent these for free. I'm not being paid, but they were sent to me. And I will do my absolute best to not let that bias my opinion. So everything you hear from now on is a full and honest opinion. So firstly, let's talk about what the EXAR TPU tubes are providing. They are of course TPU inner tubes, so they have all the benefits of every other TPU inner tube, and they are offering them in 2 different lengths. They are giving you them in a 60mm length and a 75mm length. And I quite like the 75mm length because a lot of stems go to 80mm and it's actually kind of a little bit too long, even though it's only 5mm less. Because I ride a 60 on the back and the 80mm stick out quite far, but just shaving an extra 5mm would just let the stem hug the wheel a little bit better, I think. These ones specifically are designed to fit between a 23 and a 30mm tire, so you've got lots of options there. If you run wider, or like a 32, to be honest, you're probably gonna be fine. Like these stretch quite nicely and fit pretty much any tube you can find. And that goes with any TPU inner tube really. And that brings me on to the weight. These are a claimed 36 grams plus or minus 5 grams. So that's very in line with the competition of TPU inner tubes, so it's right up there. Let's test that now. First, I'm going to measure the 60mm stem, 37 grams, so 1 over what's stated but within the range. And if we compare that to a RideNow, 32. So the RideNow is lighter, but I'm going to explain why it's lighter in a bit. Then if we do the 75 comes in at 37 grams as well, so the exact same weight, or 38 grams. And the 80mm stem on the RideNow comes in at 35, so only 3 grams less. So the reason they actually weigh just a few grams times more than the RideNow Inner tubes is actually they wanted to make the TPU wall itself a little bit thicker, just for more durability, just for slightly more puncture resistance. You actually can tell that the EXAR is thicker, so if you look at the width of the rings here, especially on this bit right here, compared to the super thin and super skinny rings here, the EXAR TPU tubes are thicker, so it really is hardly any more weight for just a little bit more thickness. Now, does this improve puncture resistance? I don't know, there's no real data to say so. But where they also wanted it to thrive a bit more was with rim brakes. So with a little bit more sidewall, you can actually increase the amount of temperature that you can put through these. So if you're doing long alpine descents and stuff, then you should be a little bit more confident if you have rim brakes with these. In the UK, it's not really a problem. Any rim brake's fine because there's no descent that's actually where you're going to be on the brakes for long enough. It's only when you get to those big alpine mountains where you'll start to put some real heat into these. They have stated that they've tested these at 70 degrees Celsius for 2 hours straight, and that's great and all, but braking is more of a cyclical load on temperature, and I would have liked to have seen more data on the cyclical loading of the temperature on the tubes. But at least they provided that, because most tubes do not provide any data on their temperature testing. Right, so future Jason here, just before the video is going to be released. I am still in contact with these guys from EXAR, and at the moment, trying to get them into stores, online stores, they're really struggling with it. And this includes Amazon, and this goes for Europe, the UK, and America as well. So if you're in any of those three, the big three, then you might still struggle to get these tubes at the moment. They do want to get these on Amazon and on online retailers, but at the moment they're looking to just get it on offline in-store places and products. So when they actually find some in-store places, I will put them in the description. If I haven't put it on there, it's because they haven't found one yet. So this is the really big downfall of these TPU inner tubes at the moment. You can't get them. Because you actually can't buy these anywhere at the moment, they're not quite a competitor yet for the RideNow TPU inner tubes. But when they do eventually get these into UK resellers, then I think they will become a very good competitor. They're just not there yet. And finally, this brings me on to the cost of these, which is very important because the reason people buy the RideNow inner tubes is because of the price, and that's why I bought them in the first place. At this current moment in time, the seller have told me that they're trying to sell them between $16 and $20. So in the UK, this is going to equate from, at this current moment in time, £12.66 to £15.80. And when you compare that to the much bigger brands, I mean, it's still more than half the price of the other big brand TPU inner tubes. When you compare them to the RideNows, it looks like the RideNows, you can almost get them for about £5.30 a tube. So you can almost get 2 or 3 RideNows for one of these. But if you have problems with your RideNow TPU inner tubes, then the cost of these is going to actually equal the same as the cost of the RideNow inner tubes. You just have much more reliability with these tubes. And like I said, you can get your money back from the seller if you need to. The first is lower rolling resistance. We already know that TPU is fast, faster than butyl, nearly as fast as latex. So yeah, they're probably right. They do roll faster. The second thing that I love is actually a small thing, but the stems come unbranded. So they're quite literally just a plain black. If I show you here, there's nothing around the stem. If you watched in my other video, I've literally painted in all the black on the RideNow inner tubes because it's kind of ugly for them to say RideNow on the side. So as stated earlier, they've decided to make the actual TPU tube thicker, slightly thicker, just so it's got a little bit more puncture resistance, hopefully, and it's just going to make it much more resilient to anything. Another little feature that they've got that you don't see on the RideNow is this nice, like, thick kind of pad at the bottom here. So anywhere where the hole is, you're not going to puncture the rim by using the whole of the inner tube. Whereas the RideNows, they kind of just use this little rubber band that you just slide to the bottom, and there's no protection at the bottom there. They're also stating that they will last longer than a butyl inner tube, and yeah, I guess that's true. It's a thermoplastic. We know plastic lasts longer than rubber, so it probably will last longer if you don't puncture in the long term. And finally is the distribution. Because they're distributing to main sellers, they should be a lot more accessible in the future. Finally, there's my testing of these tubes. So I've only actually had them in for 3 rides at the moment, so I can only judge off there. If you want me to update you, feel free to type in the comments and I'll reply if you need an update in the future. But first, the feel of them. How do they feel to ride? Well, they feel exactly like a TPU inner tube does. You know, they feel fast, they feel supple, they feel fairly comfortable for what it is. They do feel suppler than a butyl inner tube. There is a difference there. So yeah, I'd say they're the same as the RideNows. That's not a bad thing because they feel great. Just from the couple of days that I've used them for, they do seem to hold their air really well. I would say on par with the RideNows, and they're probably going to be better, but just because they have that thicker sidewall. The TPU tube does seem to hold air a lot better than a butyl tube, or marginally better, and definitely a lot better than a latex inner tube. These guys, EXAR, are a sub-company of a bigger company called Magane. I actually don't know precisely how to pronounce it, but I'm assuming that's it. And these guys sell lots of stuff. They sell cycling computers, they sell power meter cranks, they sell lights with radars built into them. So they've actually done a lot of stuff, and now they're trying to venture into the TPU market. So hopefully they've got that big brand manufacturing behind them to make these reliable. If anything happens, I'll put it in the description and you'll know if I have any reliability issues. So to answer my question, do these solve a lot of the problems that TPU inner tubes have? I would say it's starting to bridge the gap. The prices are coming down. I think that these should be more reliable in the future. Like I said, I'll put in the description if they end up not being. And of course the cost between the really cheap stuff and the really expensive stuff seems to start to be bridged. So I think we're starting to see a positive with TPU inner tubes. And actually potentially in the long run, if they keep going at the rate that they are, we might see a really big decline in people using butyl inner tubes. These might become the de facto inner tube, potentially. Let me know what you think. I also like the way that they're definitely fighting hard to give you a reliable UK buying source, and I assume this is going to be the same in America and Australia and probably around Europe as well as a whole. So if you can find them on a website near you, please let me know, and I would like to see what cost they are on that website. So, are they a competitor? I will leave that up to you to decide if it's worth spending the little extra money for more reliability and backing from UK sellers. This has been Cycling Unboxed. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you have had any experience with these or you're going to buy them, please let me know below because I would like to know your experience on them as well. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.